This is another episode of Standup Comedy, your host and MC, celebrating 40-plus years on the fringe of show business. Stories, interviews, and comedy sets from the famous and not so famous. Here's your host and MC, Scott Edwards.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another great show. We have a fantastic interviewer standing by, ready to share his story about his career and life in comedy. And we're in for a bit of a unique treat. This guy was not only one of the regulars at our club for a number of years and a great friend to all of my staff in those years, but he's gone on to fame and fortune, lots of television, and comes at comedy from a little bit of a unique position. Ladies and gentlemen, one of the best industry comics, it's Andy Kindler.
Thank you. Oh my God. I had no idea that you had arranged a studio audience.
Well, you know, you're a special guy, Andy. Good to have you on the interview.
People. Well, thank you. That's more people than ever laughed when I was at your club.
Well, it's funny that you say that, because I put in your intro that you're kind of a slant in your comedy towards the industry side. And I got to tell you, I think all my audiences always enjoyed you, but you had such a great knack of hitting some inside the business humor and being able to throw off things that the comics and the people in the business maybe appreciated or got easier than the audience. But maybe I'm making too big a deal of it. But I know that, well, for example, David Letterman loved your industry take on things. And we'll get to that later in the interview.
Sure.
But I know you're originally from New York. When did you come out to the West Coast? Did you do comedy in New York, or did you start out here?
I started out here, and I'm going to, this is the type of thing where I don't think I can keep my age out of the podcast. You know what I mean? I've been trying. My wife Susan says to me often, can you, at least not tell a couple of people how old you are? Just like I tend to be like, yeah, I'll have the chicken, and I just turned 64.
Yeah.
So yeah. I was gonna say I grew up in Queens, but I didn't do but I went to school upstate New York at a college, and I called Binghamton, and then in 1978 I literally drove cross country.
Wow. Now, was it, I'm a West Coast California kid. We always hear kind of interesting stories about growing up in New York. Did you have what you thought a fairly normal childhood? It's going to come out if it's not already obvious. You're a Jewish comic and a Jew from New York. I mean, how rare is that?
Yeah, that really was one of the things that got me in.
Was your humor, you think, based on come from your family? Were you the class clown? Did you just decide this is something I wanted to do?
My dad was really funny. I was very lucky that my dad was very funny, and I never thought it was. I remember making my family laugh in the car when I was I clearly remember I was 5 years old and I mispronounced something, and so I think I early on got the idea that making people laugh would be a good. You could get friends that way.
Right,
so,
right, and
and my dad was very funny. Everything out of his mouth, he was just hilarious.
Yeah, my dad had a good
second.
sense of humor, and I think that led to my personality traits. Now, you went to college in New York. Were your studies towards theater?
I was an English literature major.
Ooh.
And I was, well, thank you. Well, thank you. Actually, I don't even I hate this. As I get older, it's harder to read, but that just could be a age thing. But also books on tape, I all of a sudden love. But college I went to college in the mid '70s, so we did everything. We did marijuana. I wanted to be a hippie basically, and I was a musician. So I was that's what I thought I was going to do.
I didn't know you were a musician. What's your instrument?
I'm a guitar. Well, sadly, as a young man, I played the violin, but I really didn't like it. But then I still played it for 12 more years after I didn't like it. And then I switched to guitar when I was 16. And then my sister was a singer. I mean, not a professional singer, but she was a singer. And I just loved, and so we played music a lot. We went to catch a rising star in New York in 1972. I don't even know, 74, to play music. Way before I was a comic. Yeah, we just did like a 1 year, like a sign up thing. We even played it. It's true. I think we played at Pips, which is a club in Brooklyn. Yeah, so I didn't get into comedy until I came out to LA, and I just happened to stumble into comedy. I came out to be a musician. That's why I wanted to be Bob Dylan, or I wanted to be the Beatles, or I wanted to be Love.
It's so funny. We've known each other a long time now. Let's be honest, we haven't talked to each other in a couple decades, but we worked together for a couple of decades, and I don't think I knew about your musical background. That's interesting. And that you came out to LA thinking music was your future. How did it end up being comedic? What made the switch for you?
Well, in my 20s, I was very, I guess now looking back, a lot of people were like this, but I thought I was the only person. I was very kind of, for me, depressed, and I didn't really, and I was very hard on myself. So, and I've learned a lot of things. I went into therapy at the age of 59. Like, as I've said, I'm the oldest Jew to ever enter therapy. And so I got into therapy, and then what was the question? I also have ADD. I have ADD, so I forgot that. I've already forgotten the question.
But the point was, you're in LA, you want to be a musician. What made you stumble onto a comedy stage?
Cover band. See, I was very scared. I had my, the dream back then was we'll play our original songs during the day and we'll play covers at night. And so, but I was very hard on myself. I could play and I could write songs, but I was very hard on myself. And I kind of got, and also very frightened because of my early 20s, and I was very short. So what happened was that I just got frustrated with music. I was in cover bands and I did recordings and all this kind of stuff. And then I was working at a stereo store. I sold stereo equipment, and a friend of mine was like he was at a company picnic. I started to do impressions of everybody, and then what happened was he asked me if I wanted to do stand up. So I was actually in a comedy duo called Andy and Bill for a couple of years.
Really?
Yeah, 84, 85, and 86.
Wow, I had no idea. Now, I know that you came to work for Laughs in the later 80s, and you worked for
April of 1987, Scott.
You remember that?
Yes, I remember, because it was your club was a huge break for me, because you called me up and you said, Andy, the first thing I want to tell you is I pay too much, so get prepared. And I will say, you know what I got paid? Oh, this was in the mid 80s, 87. I did Stockton, Citrus Heights, where I opened up for the California. That guy was right there. The California Killer guy was right in Citrus Heights.
Oh, right. We had what did he ended up with?
Golden State Killer.
Golden State Killer. He actually hurt business because people wouldn't go out in the Citrus Heights area when he was running around.
You never told me about that.
Well, I felt
that's all you needed was to freak me out.
Well, I felt you were safe.
Well, oh man. So, but and as I've said in my act, I wasn't killing back then. So, because that's the big thing. I have OCD, so I'm always afraid I'm going to get accused of something.
So you're in this comedy duo, and you did it for a few years, and then at some point he bailed, and you just decided to go solo?
Yeah. Yes. In 86, I went solo. So then I started playing like around LA. There was a club called the Ice House.
Right.
I started there. And I don't know if you remember Igby's.
Sure.
I don't remember you coming to town. Well, you probably wouldn't have called me when we came to town. I was coming up to your area more than you were.
Yeah,
I would. To LA.
I would go to LA once or twice a year, and they would set up showcases at some of the clubs, the store, and I would see like 10 or 12 acts in a night, and then head back to Sacktown and start booking. Do you remember your first joke or bit? Oh yeah, I remember. I had like a bit like here's your even like because I didn't. I think you can vouch for this. I didn't really didn't curse really much in my act. No, until fairly clean. In fact, I'm going to bring that up in a little bit. But until the character Rusty Nails, you were a pretty clean act, and and which was taking you. I mean, it ended up taking you to Letterman and Everybody Loves Raymond. I mean, you ended up doing a lot of great stuff. But we've talked a lot about on the podcast for people interested in getting in the industry how important it is to be clean. And you started off that way. And I was just wondering if you remember some of your early material, because I know it changed. You were always right on top of what was happening in the industry. But back in '86, was there something that you liked poking fun at?
Well, I did a lot of, everything was about how small I was or how poorly I did with women. Or, I mean, so I really kind of did like I remember when I drove up to Sacramento and I would see, I would tell people about how the hotel would be like, oh yeah, it says, yes, we have dial phones. And and then I go, and they have a big sign. They have a big sign on the side of the road that says "eat." Like, it's like it couldn't be more basic than that. And then I remember I had one about Denny's. Was like I was in Denny's and I looked at the comment card and it said, "Did you find the outside of the building attractive and appealing?" Oh yeah, it drew me in like a magnet.
Yeah, Denny's. That's so funny. They were worried about their outward appearance. That's because they couldn't focus on their food. But that's interesting that you went from a comedy duo to a solo act. You were doing clean material. You came up. Did you showcase for me or send me a tape? Or did,
I don't even. I must have sent you a tape because I can't believe. I don't think you would have booked me without having seen something. And I do remember sending large VHS cassettes out. But it was actually, I mean, I'm not just saying it was my first. It was a big break for me. It was 3 weeks of work. I was on the road from 1987 to 1992, probably 40 to 50 weeks a year at one point, and that was the start of it. And so you had a club in Stockton, then you had Citrus Heights, and then of course Old Sac was the greatest because you had a house there.
Right. And one of the benefits I had as a producer is that once I had opened up 3 clubs, even with just 2 clubs after Stockton closed, and I would like to book comics regularly so they built up a following. So somebody like you, even if you only worked twice a year, you were getting 6 weeks out of one location.
Oh yeah, it was pretty amazing. It was actually invaluable. I mean, I do think I was extremely lucky because I started at a time period where there was so much work, and it was still, I think, all the great people I met there. I met Jay Johnson. Right,
the ventriloquist, very funny guy from Soap.
Yes, and I even wrote a joke for him. I'll never forget. I was so proud of it because he goes, he said the name of his, who's the guy who did, I can't think, who's the guy who did Evolution? Who's that guy? Darwin. Yeah.
Darwin the monkey, his character.
And so he said, how'd you get the name Darwin? So I came up with the joke. Well, kind of, the name just kind of evolved. So I remember if you could write a joke for a comic or give it somebody, and he was one of these people, he had been doing it for so long, and yet he was so sweet, And that was the thing that was amazing about Laughs Unlimited was like, and it really was a community within itself. I mean, and it really reminded me of a lot of ways of, because I was a door-to-door salesman. So I had horrible jobs before stand-up. So but I used to love the way after the show we'd all hang around, but it was very kind of like you're kind of selling yourself up at the Magic Hat.
Right. And then you also, I mean, you were during the decade that we were doing a bowling night. We would go out for meals. We'd have barbecues. I mean, you were part of the family, Andy, and we mentioned it before we got onto the podcast, but one of the great connections, my little sister, Lynn Stobener, and you really bonded. And Lynn Stobener, who's not only a comic and a musician, similar to you, but you two really hit it off.
Yes. Oh, we stayed for, well, first of all, I'll never forget this one time at Old Sac, we would sometimes just stay afterwards late. So one night we were singing that song, Shout, and Lynn, we were all walking around the club going crazy. We were doing, it really was. I don't think there was any other club that I can remember where there was that much of a family atmosphere. And Lynn was like, I got very, very close with Lynn. And Scott Harriet was a guy I met there. But then Lynn, I just kept contact with her. And we just were like thick as thick. It was so funny because she told me this, which I never even remembered. I never remembered that they used to have phone booths, but she said, when you first came to the club, she said, I thought you were a drug dealer because you would be hanging out all the time, just making phone calls. Because I had one of these MCI cards or whatever. So I was hanging out, talking to my friends back in LA. And she goes, what is the matter with this guy? Something is happening with him.
Well,
so we had so much fun. It was just the greatest. Ben Tony took my photos.
Yeah, okay, so Ben Tony did a headshot for you. He was our professional photographer / MC. And
Very
then
funny.
You and Lynn mentioned that when you first came to the Stockton Club, which she managed for me and MC'd, that you had this thing that you would sit and shine your shoes before you went on stage.
Oh my God, that does sound like me, but it's so bizarre. I also had weird shoes. I had like weird shoes, purple shoes.
Right.
I don't remember that though.
She just thought that was one of the funniest things that, we've had comics that used makeup and others that had a certain persona or had their hair a certain way. For Andy Kindler, this is the guy that polished his shoes before he went on stage. Isn't that a funny thing to be remembered for?
Well, this is the funny. This, I don't know if you ever knew this happened, but and it makes me laugh so much. Bob Sobner and there was another guy, and they were both kind of like co-managing Picture Size. This is a completely true story. I left my recorder on, right? So it was Bob and I forgot the guy's name, Richie, and they were going. And back then, I mean, like if I wasn't doing well, I would tell the crowd. I would say things like, "Oh, this isn't going well." You know what I mean? That's how it started, right?
Well, you're always very honest with the audience, which I think helped make your persona.
Yeah, and at first, though, it could really dig a hole because people were like, "Well, he's not excited about his own act." I'm not going to. But then, so it's Bob and Richie, and they later claimed that it was a joke because what were they going to say? But they were talking, and they go, "I don't know if this guy's going to make it. I mean, he's funny, but he's so frightened on stage." And they talked about me for like 3 minutes. And so how hilarious is that?
Oh, so you go back to listen to your set, and here's two club owners commenting on you. that had to really build your confidence.
I mean, they weren't like, "Oh, he stinks," but they were like, I know he's funny, but man, he's struggling. If he's struggling up there with a lot of people, he said early on. I mean, it did form. The thing about stand-up was when I started, I didn't realize a lot. Like all the stuff that came later about talking about the industry, all that stuff came from experiences doing it. And but I was so naive not naive, but I really thought the crowd was always right. I always wanted to make this, and I was very scared and very, I not all the time, but it was like a frightening thing. My therapist says, with all of the anxiety that I have, she's actually surprised I ever got into stand-up because I had so much nervous energy. And
well, it turned out you were a great regular act for my clubs. You worked for me many, many times at all 3 of the clubs. You brought
probably 20. I may have worked for you 10 or 20 times.
And you always brought
3 weeks. Right.
You always brought a unique type of comedy and character. Now, I wanted to allude to that. While working Stockton, you developed, I don't know if you did it before or what, but Lynn remembers that all of a sudden you would go into this character, Rusty Nails, and maybe
it's Rusty Fleming.
Oh, Rusty Fleming. I'm so
because
sorry.
I think there was an act named Rusty Nails.
Okay, that's where we got confused. Rusty Fleming.
Yes.
And I want you to do a bit of it if you remember, but what was so funny for Lynn and I was to surprise you. She had Rusty Fleming T-shirts made up, and you came in one night.
Right.
and the whole staff was wearing Rusty Fleming T-shirts in honor of you, and I still have one.
Oh, this is so good. Oh yeah, I had no problem. I would love to do. The character was based on. Did you ever have did Rick Kearns ever work for you?
No, I'm sorry, he didn't.
He was from Denver, and he was a guy who just would party, and we were very good friends. So I would make fun of him. So Rusty Fleming was basically based on what I said Rick Kearns would be like 30 years from now. And he's smoking out of his tracheotomy hole, and and the thing is, I was very clean, and this was the only really blue thing I ever did, and I did this on HBO like in the early 90s. So I don't want anybody to think this is my normal life, but anybody was like, it's basically, yeah, I got this thing in Sacramento. I get to the club. I say, can I get his advance? He goes, how much do you need? I go, I don't know. How much does an 8-ball go for in this town? He can't from my fucking away from me. One night, I had like a bacon and bean burrito. I was feeling a little queasy. I 10 minutes late for the show. They got my fucking away from me. So I said, I said, can you put an 8-ball in the bar and take it in the back? So finally, I got my Tonight Show spot. I kept saying to myself, don't say pussy, say vagina. Don't say pussy. I get in the show, I say cunt. I'm off network for 5 years. You say cunt on table, you're a big star. Who knew? It's kind of hard to do it because I used to do it like all the time, just walking around. And I remember that picture. I look like a salamander, kind of, right?
Oh, well, it was so funny because you were pretending to breathe out of the tracheotomy hole. Not breathe, smoke. You were smoking out of this hole in your neck and doing this really raspy. Yeah, I said, cunt, I'm off network for. It's just hilarious stuff. So this character really takes off, and you were obviously surprised when you saw the room full of T-shirts.
Yeah,
but
that was the thing. I mean,
it was a beloved character. It was a beloved character because it was mocking, what some overdrugged, oversmoked comic might be down the road. And I think that the staff and the club owners appreciated that. Now, the audience was probably taken aback a little and not really, I'm not sure if they enjoyed it as much as us, but that goes back to where you had this great talent of slipping in stuff that the industry caught on to or might appreciate a little bit more than the audience. You were still very entertaining to the audience, but it that nuance about the industry stuff, like, here's an entertainer that's really at their end, and what they've become over 20, 30 years being in the business. I mean, it's hilarious and poignant at the same time.
Yes. Yeah. And I really, I don't think it's hard. It would be very hard for people to understand. Well, maybe not, but there was such a family feeling there. I think I felt like I spent years there. You know what I mean? Like I was not that it was my home base, but I would go up to you, and like after the week, sometimes I did 3 weeks, sometimes then Stockton didn't last forever, but then I did 2 weeks, and I would go to San Francisco after the week was over. This was quite an amazing time period back in the 87 was when I first came there, but it really was like we went to that place, Big Reds. Remember we went to Reds?
Oh, Poor Reds, the restaurant bar.
Poor Reds, yeah.
Oh, we had so much fun there. For everybody that's listening, up east of here in the mountains, there's it was built in the 1800s, this old school bar called Poor Reds. And the food was pretty crappy, but you'd get so drunk you didn't care. And it had a circular bar, and our goal was to take over the whole bar. And we would take up 20, 30, 40 people and just kind of get drunk, get crazy, and sing. It was so much fun. I didn't know that you went with us up there. That's great to bring that up.
Yeah, I think I went 2 or 3 times. Plus, I met so many amazing comics. I mean, so many, and also amazing people. I met so, and I'm not just talking about the great Scott.
Great Scott's
How is
one of our magicians.
How old is the Great? Is the Great Scott? I keep saying because I know I have to keep asking if people are still around, living.
Right. He's still around. He's in his 70s, but he is still around and a good guy. Great Scott was a comic magician. Did you work with any of other people that you felt had a big career and or helped you?
Paula Poundstone, I worked with. I worked with tons of great comics there. Paula Poundstone was like a revelation because I had never worked with somebody who was so lie down on the stage.
Yeah, she was just herself.
And so many people loved to come up there. I mean, it was like a holiday for, I think, established comics. I was learning there, but for established comics, I think they loved it just was fun.
Yeah, and I appreciate you saying that because it's been mentioned a couple times on the podcast. We tried to make Laughs Unlimited not just another work week. We tried to make it a little bit more interactive, and you, more so than many, were part of that family. Another one, by the way, that mentioned, I should say hi, Bob Worley, who is...
Oh, the greatest. He was the guy in that night when we went late. He was clowning around with us. Nobody funnier in the world than him.
Bob Worley is amazing, but he remembers when you turned 33, you had an amazing bit you put together about being like Jesus because you turned 33. Do you remember that?
Yeah, I said, yes, 33. That's the year Jesus got his big break.
He got his big break?
Yeah, I said, it's going to happen for me. This is it. This could be it for me. Finally, recognition.
Well, Bob said to say hi, and he
I love him.
Remembers you fondly and remembered that the fact that you were able to take your birthday and Jesus and somehow make a comedy bit out of it. But you had some unique talents. Now, those talents took you somewhere, and a lot of people will recognize you if they would see your face because you did, 8 or 9 Letterman shows? How many Lettermans?
Oh, this is very exciting, and I don't want to toot my own horn, but I did about 9 or 10 stand-up spots. But then the thing that was great was I got to be a correspondent. So I think I did about 40 shows. I was on there 40 times.
No, I didn't know it was that many. 40 times on the Letterman show. That makes you a star right there.
Because what happened was our Oscar, he used to go out. Remember when he would go out and play around, and he couldn't go out anymore. So they were different. I don't know if he got too big. So he had the guy, Rupert G, would go out. And then for a lot of years, I went out and did the things that he used to kind of do. But I had, I went to the Mets training, spring training, and the Yankees spring training. And
well, one of the things that I remember that
dream come true.
Letterman really appreciated, and you were really good at, is you would be his representative, and you did a lot of the Montreal comedy festivals.
Right. Yes.
Which is huge for people that don't know. Once a year in Montreal, they would have a 1 to 2 week comedy festival.
Yeah, you used to have a French one. You used to have a French, I think they still do, French festival, and then in English. And it's like the whole thing 3 weeks, I think.
Well, it's huge and it's amazing, but Letterman would send you there and you would do these amazing bits about what was going on. And like you said, Yankees baseball, you did several things for him.
Yeah, and then I started to make my own speech at Montreal, which was called the State of the Industry. So starting in 1995, I've been going up to Montreal since 1993. And so, and I gave the speech called the State of the Industry. And it was all make fun of the industry and criticize the industry. And I've been doing it every year since then. So last year was the first year I did it remotely because we couldn't.
Right.
No business
so Letterman, now working for Letterman that many times, did you guys become friendly? Was it financially profitable or mostly for your career? What was it like working for the Letterman show?
So Johnny Carson made the rule of paying people scale. So you couldn't get rich doing it. Although I did get, when I was on the show, I got a higher rate. So I got a high rate for doing these field pieces. Because 1 year I flew into and did the Super Bowl and then I flew to his studio after that. I would really say like that was the dream come true. When I got into stand-up, it was too late to get onto Johnny Carson's show. I mean,
right,
I
which
remember,
made or broke comics all the time.
Yeah, and I don't know. I never met Macaulay or any of those people, but I always wanted to get on the Letterman show. So when I got on the show, which was 1992, I was very nervous. So when I it's like you know how Roseanne had that great opening set. Well, I didn't have a great opening set. I was just nervous, but I didn't get back on the show for 4 more years. And when I came back the second time, I said, you know, Dave, I did this during my set. I was here 4 years ago, and I'm here now again. I can't live on this kind of money.
And I bet he appreciated that.
Oh, all I tried to do was make him laugh because he was my hero. You know, he really was like, along with like other people, he was my hero. You know, I just loved the self-deprecating thing.
Yeah, David Letterman was one of those guys that, and kind of like Leno, Carson came from a different background, but Letterman and Leno started off as stand-up comics and then worked into these hosting roles on TV. And Letterman, even more so than Leno, would really support comedy. Not as much as Johnny. Johnny really had more comics on than anybody. But these shows were a great showcase for stand-ups and literally could make a career. And if that was 1 or 2 visits, it could make a career. For you, doing that many, I'm certainly made the name and the face of Andy Kindler more known. And I'm sure that led to, I know you did an HBO special, right?
Right. Yes. That was probably another, that was another like big break. And I did Rusty Fleming. I closed the special with Rusty Fleming.
Did you really? So that character lived on.
I was very scared to do it. I was very scared to do it because I swear, I mean, you could come, you would never hear me use the C word. I can't even say. So back then, there was actually, you know, now a lot of people, there's more language on TV.
No, but back then it was rare. How did Rusty Fleming do on HBO? Was it taken well?
Oh, yes, it was because the joke was the intention of the joke was so clear. There's nothing gratuitous about it. So you have to really laugh.
Right. Well, and then I know that from those 2 things that you ended up doing a spot with my buddy Gary Shandling on the Larry Sanders Show. You also were a character on Everybody Loves Raymond with Ray Romano.
That was huge. Yeah, I was on every year of that show. I did that 2 or 3 episodes a year. So I've been very lucky. And I didn't really meet. I don't think Ray ever played that because Ray started in New York. People think I started in New York because I would go back to New York and play there. But I started in the kind of the way that's not recommended. I started in LA. I would have had to have moved to another city, you know, because I was living there already. So I kind of like was thrown into the fire in a way, but it was good.
Yeah, but that development and being an LA comic with everything that happened, I mean, that's a great career, Andy. And going back to when you overheard, you know, Richie and Bob saying, I don't know if this guy's got a career. And here, you know, 3 decades later, you've done, you know, 40-something Lettermans and a regular on Everybody Loves Raymond and the Larry Sanders Show. I mean, you've had great success. Congratulations.
Well, thank you. I really, the other thing, and I don't know how you feel about this, but the one good thing, well, not the one good thing, but when you age, as you age in the right way, you get appreciative. And so, like, I was very, very ambitious, but I didn't want to admit to it. I was very, very jealous. I was all those things that people are when they're young, when you're younger. So I really am I couldn't be happier with what's happened. You know, I love doing I still love doing stand-up. And so what more can you ask for? And except, you know, because I didn't know the pandemic was it.
Right. But I mean, a lot of people you and I both know had maybe a 5 or 10 year career. We had other people that we knew that very funny people that made a good life out of just being road comics. We also know the other end where people like Leno and Seinfeld ended up being megastars and multimillionaires starting from the same stage as you did. But you found a nice I mean, really comfortable in the middle there where you got off the road. You're not, no offense, but you're not a household name like Seinfeld or Leno, but you had a great career, made a lot of money, and huge success. I mean, I would be I mean, that's a great thing to have happened in your life, and you earned it, because even though you were a nervous little Jew, you pulled it off.
I wasn't nervous. In fact, you told me that should have been my moniker.
Well, Andy, thanks so much. Was there anything we didn't touch on? Any good road stories? Anything that any particular person? I know Letterman helped you develop, and working with people like Paula.
Diane, I mean, so many amazing memories I have specifically about Laughs Unlimited. I met Diane Nichols there, and I met so many. It was an education for me, because I met a lot of comics who had really tremendous amount of years of comedy, and so many funny people came through. Did Shanley work the room, right?
Right.
Yeah, because I remember, and Leno too, right?
Leno, yes, was one of our regulars. I did several concerts with him, and he worked the club a lot. Seinfeld, Ray Romano. I mean, all these people, that's what I was saying, is they worked my stage before you came along. And,
wow.
and yet you ended up working with them down the road. I mean, it's really a community that you were able to plant a seed and grow a great career out of.
And a lot of San Francisco comics I met that came through. Brian Posehn, a lot of those guys came through where I left Unlimited, came through all the time.
Oh yeah, it was really good. And I got to tell you, Andy, I said it before, I'm going to say it one last time. I'm not kissing your butt or anything, but it was so true that of all the comics, there were just a few that rose to the top or were part of our Laughs Unlimited family, and you were one of those guys. And the fun that we had off stage, and the stuff with Rusty Fleming and you and Lynn Stobener, I mean, it was really an advantage for me as a producer to have you come work for us. So thank you.
Oh, thank you. It really means a lot to me. And it's nice to talk about it too, because it was like, it's different for everybody who's going through it. For you were a club, you were a club owner during this. And for me, it was like, this is where I started. And so it's like, so many different memories I have. And then people like Bruce Baum, I haven't seen him in a while, but so many people that I met would never have met without the club.
Well, we appreciated having you be a part of that Laughs family, and we're so proud of the career that you made out of it. So, ladies and gentlemen, before we end this, we want to let you know that we've put together a terrific set by Andy Kindler that I'm going to put on right after this interview. Andy, it's been so much fun talking and catching up about things. Be sure to let Rusty Fleming know we said hey. And continued.
And thanks for being so understanding about my family stuff. It meant a lot to me, because I really was out to lunch. But I'm back. I'm somewhat back.
All right. Well, we can't wait to see you back on stage. And thanks for doing the interview today. Ladies and gentlemen, coming up right now, some great stand-up comedy by Andy Kindler. Hey, thanks, Andy.
Thank you, Scott.
Get ready to laugh, folks. Seriously, get ready to laugh, and then get ready to faint from laughter, because I'm hilarious. I've never had a bad set. That's an inside joke. They call me the executioner of laughs, the hitman of comedy, Gil O'Teen. That's what they call me. Never had a bad set, but I've never blown the roof off of a club. In fact, when I leave a city, they call me up and tell me that the roof is even more securely fastened to the building. How long was that opening joke? I'm known as the king of premises. I gave myself that moniker. I came up with a lot of premises other comics have done. I was the first one. I was the first comic to notice a difference between men and women. That's right. Before that, comics used to go, men and women are very similar. I guess there's nothing funny about it. So certain biological things. No, I broke the glass thing. Because men and women are different. Am I right, guys? Right? Ladies, take a breather. Guys, are you with me? Ladies, I'll be right back with you. Guys, ladies, guys, ladies, guys. Women, they go to the bathroom in pairs, right? Right, ladies? And men, they go to the bathroom in pairs. And guys are often verbally abusive. And if they're verbally abusive, they're probably going to be physically abusive. And the first time it happens, you're like, oh, I'm dating Marlon Brando from Streetcar Named Desire. But no, it's not a movie. And if you don't get out of the relationship, you might end up in a shelter. Because guys and gals are different, right, fellas? Ladies, guys, lady, guys. Women leave the seat down, and men, you will eventually have to get a restraining order. That's all I'm saying. Genius, social commentary, and funny. Welcome to my world. The Native Americans pleaded with Columbus when he got off the ship to no avail. Join the club. The old white men who ran the masters never said to African Americans or women. Everybody's doing programming now, is how I'm starting off the joke. You got your Amazon Prime, you got the Hulu, you got other examples that I forgot to come up with. I'm very excited. I just signed a deal with UPS Ground. I have a show going to be shown on UPS Ground. Next week I have a meeting with FedEx Saturday Delivery. I'm pitching a show called Do Not Ship Blood. Exactly, everyone should be laughing that way. When I go into I'm loosening up my legs, my hamstrings during the set. When I go into a FedEx and they tell me I can't ship blood, I get enraged. Oh, great. What am I supposed to walk my blood to the Mayo Clinic? A lot of people ask me, Andy, why have you never been in movies? They don't ask me that, but just for the purposes of the joke. I've never been in a movie. You've noticed it, right? Those of you who don't recognize me. You know why? I'm the last victim of the blacklist of the McCarthy era in the late 1940s and 1950s because I was a communist. That's why I don't get callbacks. And I was ready to name names, too. I didn't care. I said Larry the Cable Guy was a communist. I said Jeff Dunham and Walter and Peanut were communists. I just named names of comics I didn't enjoy. That's all I did. And I'm still a communist. I stuck with it. Even with Stalin. I liked him. I was like, okay, he's a little moody. He killed 30 million people. Did you think about all the people he didn't kill? Huh? Plus, the Soviet Union is so roomy. I'm selling this joke to the History Channel. There's a guy named Godwin, and he's online, and if you introduce Hitler into an argument, there's a thing called Godwin's Law. It says any argument is lost when you introduce Hitler into it. I think it's nonsense. I have been calling everybody Hitler since I was 5 years old. I was the first person to say Bill Maher is like Hitler, except Hitler was more likable. I said that. I said Donald Trump is like Hitler, except at least Hitler was a veteran. I mean, this Goblin guy, what's the matter with him? What is he, some kind of a Nazi? That joke went, woo! I'm starting a Jewish camping organization. It's called Tents Up. Jews learn to overcome their fear of working with their hands in a wilderness setting, erecting tents. Tents Up. Very good, very funny. I was in Toronto, and I saw a shop, and the name of the shop in Raisin was called Fashionably Yours. It's like a dress shop. And I was like, is that the way you sign a letter? Is it a pun? What the heck? I was yelling at the store. Very truly auto parts. Sincerely shoes. Regretfully carpet and tile. All the boats. I remain funeral services. From drapes. A lot of critics compare me to Joan Rivers. Not my comedy, they just predict I will die during a routine procedure. Thank you, everybody, I love you!
Well, that's the very funny and definitely unique Andy Kindler. Like I told you and alluded to in the interview, he comes at comedy from a little different position, and it made him a joy to work with over the decades. We want to thank Andy for doing the interview, and we hope you enjoyed all this. Thanks for listening. Next week, another great show. Talk to you soon. Bye.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of Stand-Up Comedy, your host and MC. For information on the show, merchandise, and our sponsors, or to send comments to Scott, visit our website at www.standupyourhostandmc.com. Look for more episodes soon and enjoy the world of stand-up comedy. Visit a comedy showroom near you.